in my last year, we were teaching a couple. His name was Alexander, and her name was Sylvia. And they had a really interesting conversion experience, you could say. So we first taught their mom. She didn't really want to listen to us. His mom. She didn't really want to listen to us. But we eventually convinced her to let us teach her a lesson. And then we noticed that she had a bunch of dishes because she made food, and then she drove around on a little motorcycle and she sold the food door to door. So that's how we kind of got the in, is we washed a lot of her dishes. And then after her initial not really wanting to listen to us, we kind of broke the ice with that. She eventually didn't progress in the gospel, was really into her church and didn't really want to change. But right next door lived her son, Alexander, and then Sylvia. So we eventually got him to go to church. Sylvia kind of felt she had an answer, felt she had gained a testimony, and was ready to get baptized just by the way she had felt at church, that she'd felt really welcome and that she had felt the Spirit there. Alexander was a little bit tougher, you could say. It was a little bit tougher for him to gain that testimony. He kind of told us in one of the lessons that he believed in everything that we were teaching, and he kind of just had a doubt about Joseph Smith, that he had really been an instrument to restore the gospel. So we really kind of were nailing that hard, just to help reinforce that and help him to gain that testimony. So I remember we watched a Restoration movie. We talked about kind of the life of Joseph Smith. We talked about the Restoration a couple times. And he was just looking to get that answer. And I know he was doing his part. He was reading, he was praying, going to church to get that answer. And I remember one day we went back to an appointment. We would always ask, oh, how did the reading go that we had left you? And he'd always have several questions. So we asked, oh, do you have any questions for us? And he was like, yeah, I want you to explain 2 Nephi 3:5. And I kind of thought in my head, I was like, oh, that's interesting. We hadn't even left for him to read. But we went to it, we read it, and it's one of the few prophecies in the Book of Mormon that talks about Joseph Smith, that he was going to be the prophet of the Restoration. And when we explained that to him, you could see that the light bulb just flicked in his head. That he didn't really understand it when he had first read it, but now that he understood it, and we explained that it was one of the few scriptures that talked about Joseph Smith in the Book of Mormon, that mostly it talked about Christ. But I remember that, and we asked him, how did you come across this scripture? And he said he woke up one day with the numbers 2, 3, 5 in his head. And I know that the Spirit told him to go read in the Book of Mormon, and he looked in the Book of Mormon in 2 Nephi 3:5. And we testified to him that that was his answer, a very specific answer from God, from what he specifically needed to know, that Joseph Smith truly was a prophet. And I know that that was from God, and it was based on the efforts that he was doing, that God had given him that answer. And then we kept teaching them, and then they got baptized, and then we kept teaching them, and we taught them the lessons over again. And the only thing after that they had a doubt about, that they kind of both did, was baptisms for the dead. And so they're kind of we'd be like, oh, do you have any more questions? And in a couple lessons, he'd be like, I still kind of don't know about those baptisms for the grandpas and the great-grandparents that you do. So we're kind of just teaching them that, and we prepared them. A special thing about the Guatemala City South mission is that the temple's there. And our mission president gave us permission, if we helped some convert or a member that we had reactivated search for names, do their family history, we could even take them to the temple to do those baptisms with them. So we were really working on that, helping them prepare to be able to go to the temple so they could have the first-hand experience and have truly understand and gain a testimony about baptisms for the dead. And so we got it where we arranged it, and we could take them to the temple, Alexander and Sylvia. And so Alexander that day was going to get baptized for his dad as well as Sylvia's dad, her dad. And we did it, and we could tell it was a spiritual experience. And the next lesson we went back, we talked to them about that experience they had in the temple. This big burly guy, Alexander, kind of got a little emotional. And we talked to them both about how they'd felt in the temple. And they both said that they felt that both of their dads were there. That they were there to witness that baptism, and that they had accepted it. And that was the spiritual confirmation that they needed to know that that was truly a thing, that temples are necessary, and that baptisms for the dead is a real ordinance and a blessing that we have. So they had two great spiritual experiences that were specifically for the doubt that they had. and it was based on the efforts that they were doing to come to know if that it was true.